Coming up, it took Cooper Flagg going down for Duke to mount a comeback against Georgia Tech, proving once and for all that he is, in fact, the Cam Thomas of college basketball. We dive in, coming up next.
You are Locked On Nets, your daily Brooklyn Nets podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, my friends, it is the Locked On Nets podcast, right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team, the Brooklyn Nets, every single day. He's Doug Norrie. I'm Adam Marmot. We thank you, as always, for making us your first listen of the day. We're 100% free on all those great platforms. And let you know, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. And Doug, ahead of the Nets Bulls game, pre-gaming it, Fan Take Friday on a Thursday night. That's how we like to do it.
Oh yeah, you know, it was either do it before the game and the game kind of ends up being what it is, or we just go and watch the game, enjoy it. Yeah, talk about that game later. Like, and that's just how it's gonna go. Look, when you do 5 days a week, this is sometimes how it comes out in the wash.
It's called picking your battles. Are we gonna wake up at the crack of dawn tomorrow to talk Nets Bulls, or are we gonna go ahead and just bask in some fan takes?
The one if you do a Nets podcast 5 days a week during a tank, you can come in with some criticism. Anyone else?
That's right.
Not interested. not interested. But hit that like and subscribe button. We'll make sure you hit the like and subscribe button and give it 5 stars. And then we'll talk a little Fan Take Friday.
One of the things that came up for me, so I was watching the ACC tournament. You got Duke. They're down early, 26-16 to Georgia Tech. And unfortunately, I'll get to my ultimate point about this. But tongue-in-cheekly, without Cooper Flagg, Duke's really good. With him on the court, they were like a -10. But with him off the court, they came back and totally blew out Georgia Tech, proving, listen, like, I don't know, is he really the number 1 overall pick? Like, where's the team value here for a player like this?
Well, and if you believe what he said, that if the Hornets draft number 1, he's headed right back to Duke. Then we'll get
back to Duke.
Make it our chance to find out. You know, and all the anti-tanking culture bros out there are going to say, well, this is why you don't want to throw your season into a trash pile. It doesn't help to play in Charlotte either, I don't think, probably. But I feel like it might look a little better if you're
that, but you know,
if you're in the Big Apple, it's probably a little different. You get a little built-in culture bump. But now with Cooper Flagg, I think it will be interesting to see sort of what happens. I hope he's okay. I know he got wheelchaired out of the stadium.
No boot or anything. He was back on the bench, so like it seemed like he avoided serious injury, which you know, above everything else, hope the kid is okay. But by the way, like this, the real take here, all jokes aside, is that you don't know. Like nothing is guaranteed. Players get hurt all the time. We saw this when it was Kyrie Irving coming down on Giannis's foot and what that meant for the Brooklyn Nets once upon a playoff run. Like, and that doesn't mean that Cooper Flagg isn't going to go on to be an amazing rookie talent, but this is the nature of sports. Like sometimes things happen like this, and that includes ping pong balls and everything else in the spectrum. Like that was the immediate thought that I had when he went down was, oh, that's right. You never know what's going to happen, even with premier top 10 generational kind of talents coming out of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, but you can't live your life that way. I don't think. Like you have to just assume.
Right.
Like,
yes.
Yeah, I know you're not saying that because there are groups out there who say, "Oh, it's a lottery," or I get that all the time. It's a lottery, or like you never know. It's like, yeah, I get it.
I prefer the best possible chances for the best possible outcome. If we're all just picking our choices here.
Again, a comet could hit Earth tomorrow and the draft doesn't matter. So I get that everything's on the table here. Like I get we can
all be nihilists, but come on, isn't it more fun to have a little bit of optimism around life?
Yeah, the Nets could draft Cooper Flagg and then he get hit by a bus. Like it can happen. Like I'm not saying I don't think it's gonna, but for sure it could. I don't think we should change the reason we're doing things. No, but I think I do think it's interesting. One cool thing is, I mean, just from a tournament perspective, with the Nets drafting this year, there are guys. It is cool for the first time in a long time that you're seeing guys that could be on the Nets next year. Like this has not really been a part of this really hasn't been part of the conversation for a long time. Nets fans have not watched a tournament with their sights on hey, because they're going to draft in the top 10. You know what I mean? They're going to draft top 8, top 6. These guys, and I know not every guy's in the tournament, but the fact that it's even on the table is an interesting prospect, I think, for Nets fans that has not existed. I mean, for 20 years, when was the last? We're talking decades, a long time since you stared at a team, you stared at a situation where a few of these guys are going to be on the team next year, like for sure. And you're going to say he watched from the tournament. Like, I just think just from that perspective, Nets fans have not had that storyline in, I mean, I really, when was the last time? I can't even venture a guess. They haven't picked in a high draft pick since, I mean, Brooke Lopez. I mean, like, what was the last time? Like, it's been a really long time. Is that really how far it is? I'm probably wrong. Someone's going to call me out on this. It's not like, okay.
We're doing real time.
What was the last time they picked in the top? What was the last time they picked top 5 in the draft?
Hold on. We're doing it. We're going to get there. They picked the number 3 pick, 2010. You know him. You know the man. It was Derek Favors. That's right. Power forward center.
Okay, great.
Georgia Institute of Technology. One of the proudest lineages of basketball pedigree, the Georgia Tech Institute of Technology. But yeah, that was Derek Favors back in 2010. So you're talking 15 years ago, and nothing around that really sniffs it either. Like, it's all, 20s and 17. You have 11 back in 2009, the year before, with Terrence Williams, but you really don't have historically. This has not been a franchise. 2001, we all know the guy, Eddie Griffin, went on to have an incredible comedic film career, but didn't necessarily translate to success for the Brooklyn Nets. And you and I, since doing the podcast, these picks, and by the way, on paper, the picks haven't mattered. It's turned into Nick Claxton. It's turned into Cam Thomas, right? So the Nets have had success there, and it's also been part of transactional moves that they've made throughout the years. But to your point about in terms of watching the tournament and just being like, oh, yeah, there's names to keep an eye on here that realistically could be a part of their first pick in the round, and then also talking about other picks throughout the draft there as well. So this is a completely different version of it. And I'll just quickly say, before we're going to talk a little bit more draft stuff here, when we think about how many picks the Nets are going to probably make, because I think there's going to be some fluidity there as well as some fan takes here. But like, Edgecombe has had a season that has elevated his profile in terms of the draft. We've seen someone who, like, some guys were really high on him already. Jeremiah Fears has elevated his draft stock over the course of the college season. So it's been fun to see that as well, where guys that maybe were 12 to 15 or 15 to 20 are now lottery picks and are now elevating themselves even higher in that, which is something the Nets can really dream on. We will. Coming up here in a second. Talk about fan takes. Some people want to know about the end of this season and whether or not Dariq Whitehead needs to be playing with the Brooklyn Nets. Plus, how many picks will Brooklyn actually make? We'll do that here. Coming up in just one moment.
All right, before we get to that, say about our friends over at FanDuel. March Madness that we talked about is here. FanDuel gives you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. It's $200 extra bucks to use at everything and anything, from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories, even who's cutting down the Nets. You got your eyes on some of those underdogs. Maybe you just want to get in on some of that in-game action, like you see Cooper Flagg go down. You might want to say to yourself, hey, something might happen here. You go over to FanDuel, you make it count for you. FanDuel app is simple to use. When you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com and get in on the college hoops action all tournament long. FanDuel.com.
All right, so as we continue today's Locked On Nets episode, talking about the tournament, March Madness, Cooper Flagg, high draft picks. I will, before we talk a little Dariq Whitehead on a fan take here, I don't know if you saw Gilbert Arenas talking about like what it means to be drafted in the major markets. I know that you're tapped into Gilbert Arenas in his podcast and everything that he says, because listen, historically, old Gilly Beans has been nothing but spot on takes, and I would say deep cut analysis. But one thing that he mentioned, and I take it with a grain of salt that it's worth, is that for high draft picks, we're talking about Cooper Flagg and saying, Charlotte, no thanks. When you talk about like endorsement contracts, there are bonuses associated with, if you're on the East Coast market, specifically New York, and Brooklyn is included in that. And then also if you're in LA, whether it's the Clippers or the Lakers. And I do find that like interesting when it comes to tinfoil hat conspiracy theory kind of level stuff about how the NBA treats the lottery. They want their league to be good. They know that maybe the product has suffered a little bit this season, the tanks, etc. Listen, I'll take any edge that you can get. And if the fact that Brooklyn is an East Coast and considered to be, if not a major, like a offshoot major market, hey, whatever gets Cooper Flagg here. That's all that I care about. I don't care how crooked the process is.
Well, if you think that like he's okay, well, I don't think they're going to like conspiratorially, shove the, freeze.
Well, they
freeze
should,
the ping
Doug.
pong ball. Yeah, freeze the ping pong ball to make sure that like, Adam Silver is able to pick it up, like the old thing with David Stern.
That's chilly.
But I do think we might see a time when like a player, I don't think it's going to be Cooper Flagg, but the fact that it was even floated makes it interesting. looks at the situation and says, I just don't want to go to this place. It hasn't happened. Pete Manning, or sorry, Eli, it kind of happened with way back in the day with the Giants, right? Where he sort of forced his hand. I'm actually surprised a little bit we haven't seen it more. I wonder if guys just worry it'll hurt their sort of aura a little too much to do it, and that's why you don't really want to.
If you're a whiny guy that only wants to go where he wants to go, kind of thing.
Look, I'm pro labor, so I'm always hey, if you're worth that much, you should dictate where you want to go. It's 100%. It's kind of a funky system that everyone just gets to get drafted into it, and the players don't seem to have much of a control. Now the dollars end up making up for a lot of that. So it's well, okay,
generational millions and millions of dollars.
Yeah, generational money. Generational money tends to soften the landing a little bit when it comes to being mad. So I get why you wouldn't want to do it, and you're going to deal with a lifetime of sort of bad vibes, maybe, and say you're selfish, but maybe, possibly. Now, if the situation's so dire, maybe you look at a Charlotte, and you're I just don't want to play with those guys. I'm not a Miles Bridges fan. I don't like what they've done. I think you could tell a decently compelling story for the right kind of team or the wrong kind of team, however you view it. I do wonder if at some point we'll do it. Cooper Flagg is probably the guy with enough cachet right now, to be able to say, hey, maybe he just doesn't want to, and I'll just wait to see how it goes, or force Sam to be I'm just not going to play there. If you try to draft me, I'll go back to Duke or something. I don't think it's likely to happen, but I don't think it's I think it's a non-zero chance that it could, right? Just because some of these teams just have I just want to play in Utah. They lose, they sit their guys on purpose. That's not fun. We've watched this. They've set their guys all year on purpose because they want to be bad, and it's Utah. I don't want to go play there for the next 5 years. I don't know. I think it's on the table. I don't think it's likely though.
The other side of it is too. It's okay, I don't want to play in Charlotte, and so if that's what happens, then I'm going back to Duke. Okay. What about next year when it ends up being Utah, and you're I don't want to play there. I'm going back to Duke again. At some point,
this is why it's not likely. But the NIL stuff means you're not poor.
And by the way, it should be that should be a reality, right? Totally. We won't need to get in the weeds here on what college makes off of their athletes and why they should be making NIL money, but that changes it. It was never about, oh, I want to get to the NFL and start my career as soon as possible. It was, I want to get to the place where I can make the most money and maximize my value as quick as possible. Now that college offers that income for players, yeah, guess what? I can go back, crush it for another year. And Cooper Flagg, unlike maybe some other players, we've seen this in the past. It's not usually about the elite of the elite. Sometimes it's about guys that think, well, if I go back to college, especially in the NFL, maybe I can go from being a fringe first round quarterback to being a top 10 quarterback. That matters to me, their status there, etc. When it comes to Cooper Flagg, listen, there's going to be great players next year as well. It's still going to be the Cooper Flagg draft, in my opinion, at least it stands right now today, right? So we're going to be talking about him, number one, and what team falls into that place. So there's a limited risk there for him too. It'd be interesting to see how it shakes out. Also, it'd be interesting to see how he feels about Brooklyn. Saying he doesn't want to play for Charlotte is not a ringing endorsement for other teams. It's just he doesn't like that franchise and what they're up to.
Has he heard about how good the facilities are? Because if he's heard how good the facilities are and how good the spread is, which I know there's certain accounts that want to tell you that's all these guys care about, which is a total joke. But
they had a roast beef au jus in the post game. Boys, I gotta tell you, if you're not going to Brooklyn, you're missing out.
Well, it's something you only believe if you talk to the media department within the organization. Nobody else. There's nobody else cares. There's all these places. These guys who cares? So when the media department kind of feeds you this BS. You can go out and spit it out, but New York City for sure counts, and Brooklyn,
of course, yes,
little brother to the Knicks, such as they are. It's still New York and it's still Brooklyn, and that fan base can get dialed up with the right guy or with the right guy there. So I think there's I don't think the Nets would be the team that he would do that for. I think it's they basically said they said it outright. They said Charlotte, so they said the team. It's we don't want to go play in Charlotte. Okay, and by the way. At some point, there has to be some punishment around the tanking, I believe. There has to be some, and whether it's real punishment, you get fined, or they smooth the lottery odds, and now you just look stupid for you smooth it all the way 1 through 10, it's even, or something like that, and maybe that's what it is. Okay, then fine. But the other real way to get punished is when you have a generational talent come out and be no. No, I don't want to. I don't want to go there. Like, sort of. I mean, honestly, like Luka I think did that a little bit with Sacramento. Now that I think about it, I think there was a little like, don't draft me. I'm not going to play in Sacramento, and they took Bagley. I think that was like part of the narrative there. He was like, I'll stay in Europe. If it's Sacramento, I'd rather stay in Europe. Like, and I think that was part about
like the European players that seems more tangible because it's, hey, listen, like I have my own. European basketball is not the NBA, but it's also, I have my own life here. And you know what I mean? Like in a lot of ways, like a European player, it's kind of like, I can always go back and do my thing. We've seen players go back and do that, which feels different than maybe US born players where it feels like this is the pinnacle and you'd be hard pressed to push out. I could be building that own narrative around European, born players versus American, but that does seem to be something that can play itself out. And maybe that's a little bit of when you see Luka or when you see Joker, when he's done playing ball in the US, he's not building his brand here. He's going home. And then he comes back and he plays more basketball and he's amazing, but it's not as incentivized maybe from a brand standpoint to be worried about those things and maybe not put a line in the sand. One thing I want to do here, because we're going to talk to Dariq Whitehead. I want to get to like how many players we think the Nets will actually draft. But you brought up about the flattening of the lottery odds. I don't know if you had seen this. We brought this up like a month and a half ago. And I painted, I think, what was a poor picture. I had a good idea in my mind, but I didn't bring it all together. Enough people have asked about it. So I went ahead and pulled these up in here, right? If you're visually over on YouTube right now, you can see what's going on, and we'll go ahead and just break it down really quick. I flattened the crap out of the draft odds like you were talking about. There's two ways that you can do it. The NBA playoff picture, champion. If you're in the finals, you still have 0.5% chance to get the number 1 overall pick. Conference finals, you're getting a 1% chance. 2.5% for the semis. First round teams are all getting 5.5%. But then you talk about the elimination tournament. All these lottery teams, you got to go compete for it. And if you win that draft playoff tournament, 5% odds. And if you compare these numbers, I know it's hard to do it in real time, but you're talking about setting up margins that incentivize your best chance to get your best odds, if you're not an elite team that's going to win a championship, is to still make the playoffs. Being the 8th seed is more valuable than tanking to the bottom. That is the easiest. Like I thought about this a lot since we did that episode because I blew my explanation. And I think you did a good job. It's like, that's it. Eliminate it. Whatever happens, happens, even odds. I think you can incentivize it in a way where every team should want to make the playoffs to give themselves the best chance at a pick if you're not going to be winning the championship. And then everything down the line plays itself out. And it makes it a much more balanced version of this. And then the money spreads around, the competition spreads around, and big contracts spread around too. Like I feel very good about what I came up with when it came to resetting the tank situation.
Yeah, I think that's clearly better. I think like just having it way flattened, way more smooth and flattened is always better. The reason I said mine was better was because then we just eliminate everything from it. You know what I mean? Like we just eliminate, like the reason I said, even odds across the board is that that just means you always just go out there and try your hardest. Go out there and try your hardest. And so that's going to work out for you. And sometimes not, but at least we know your guys will play all the way to the end because you got to sell tickets and will have no reason to run like what the Sixers are doing right now, or all these teams are doing. Like, and so your thing is definitely better too. I would just say, I'm just trying to, but I know what everyone's saying to mine is that, well, what if the Celtics win it and draft the first overall pick?
By the way, though, so I'll say two things about that here, which is like, because that'd be a fair criticism, right? So again, because I'm just patting myself hard on the back here, 5.5% chance if you make the playoffs and get eliminated. If you win the elimination bracket, 5% chance, 4% chance, right? So it's so marginally closer, but you still have your best odds. And we're talking about 14% versus 11.5%, right? All these numbers are really tight. But to your point, with the new CBA and the way money works, even if the Celtics spiked and got the first overall pick and drafted a player, okay, try to manage all those contracts. Like they're already going to butt up against that rate now and what this iteration of the team is going to look like. They've done an excellent job managing all of it, but that landscape is going to change as well. The new structure that's why the NBA tried to do that, to flatten things out so that when the big contracts come up, it's sometimes going to come down to Charlotte can offer you the money, not one of the major markets. But if you want that big contract, then some of those talents are going to go there. And I think you start to get to that place, right, where then good teams just start to build up in different locations, predicated on still about the dollar, the bottom line, and less about where they are, because you'll end up getting a couple of really good players there, no matter who ends up winning the lottery. All that to say, that's not the system that's in place right now. So we'll have to wait and see if any changes get made. In the meantime, we're still concerned about how far the Nets can tank and if they can get higher in the draft odds and give themselves the best chance to get Cooper Flagg. But when we come back on the other side, Fan takes. That one is a massive fan take. We didn't call anybody individually, but everyone's been asking about how do you fix the NBA. The other one was about what happens down the stretch here. 17 games to go ahead of this Chicago Bulls matchup. Who needs to be playing more? Some people are itching about Dariq Whitehead, and we'll tell you all about him coming up on the other side. Before we do that, though, my friends, I got to tell you about our friends over at Monarch Money, because I've said this before and I'll say it again. I can't manage my money very well. I don't know where it is. I'm not sure what it's up to, and I can't keep track of it in any way, shape, or form. But ever check that bank account and wonder where'd all the money go? That's why Monarch Money comes in so handy. It isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete, financial command center where you can track all of your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop managing your money and start building wealth. You better believe that I've enjoyed the easy way that I can manage my money with our partners inside of Monarch Money for smooth transitions between tracking and personal goal setting when it comes to your finances. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNBA for half off your first year. Okay. Tying a pretty little bow on today's Locked On Nets episode. We'll find out what the results are of that Chicago Bulls and Nets game. I'm not going to lie to you.
Go Nets.
Really yeah, go Nets. For sure, go Nets. I mean, let's just be clear, go Nets. We actually talked about this before we started because I want to get to Dariq Whitehead, but Chicago is like a great case study. They're not dissimilar to the Nets in that they've been a waffling franchise in terms of, well, you guys aren't going to compete for a championship. You should blow this thing up. Did that about a season and a half too late. But then even when they blew it up, they do have some nice young pieces, and they've kind of just committed to saying we're going to be competitive and we're going to try to go for it. They very easily could have tried to go into the tank mode like Utah has done, like Charlotte, and instead, like, they're trying to win basketball games. And again, I find it commendable. I'm sure their fan base doesn't love it either when you look at the tank odds and, and see where you stack up. But I think it's just a better way to watch, because by the way, they are 27-38 right now. It's not like you're talking about being a great team, and they've won 3 in a row. They're 5-5 in their last 10. But if they were tanking, and so was Brooklyn and Philadelphia because their injuries are in that boat, we'd be talking about 7 teams that are all trying to lose as much as possible. It's 25% of the league. That's insane to force people to watch 30 games where a quarter of your league doesn't give a crap about the rest of the year.
They have this pick to Portland that's protected 1 through 14. So like they could have tanked. Like that conveys if they 15th or higher. I mean, I guess there's a world where like it could convey like they make the playoffs or something. And so they have all the reason in the world.
In the East. It's a really dangerous place to be when you're trying to throttle between making the playoffs or not, because the back end of it is an absolute mess.
I mean, in their thing, they've never seen to know if they're coming or going. Like they don't get maximum value for Caruso. They bring Giddey back in, although Giddey's been decent this year. They wait way too long on Levine. They wait way too long on Vooch. Like in terms of trading these guys. So they wait too long on DDR. Like they just kind of like never fully committed to it. Whether you want to say it's because they want to sell tickets and the owners, like the ownership's kind of maybe a little cheap or whatever, and they've never been able to kind of figure it out. Or I'm not really sure, but I never know. I never know. It's so hard to talk about this. I guess it's commendable. It's not correct, but like, when Cooper Flagg, you should lose these games. I don't know what to tell everybody. It sucks. It's like, I only blame the system. I don't blame the teams. I never blame the teams for it. Like I only blame the cockamamie system that they have going here. All right, let's hit a couple Nets things on the way out here. Bulls.
A couple of things to get to here. First of all, from Fane757, he commented, "The most miserable franchise on earth." That's in reference to the Brooklyn Nets. Listen, I think there's
come on, stop.
But it's a shout out. Yeah, you know what I mean? Listen, you send in the messages. We dispense them to the world for you. I thought this was good though too, from Ray J90. I'll just sum it up. It's basically about Cam Thomas and how if you're a naysayer or a detractor from him, how can you be saying that if typically most of the fan base also says this isn't a very good roster, not a lot of high-end talent, they're going to have to reshape this entire thing in the draft for the next couple of years, and then also say, yeah, Cam Thomas doesn't really facilitate very well, certainly takes a lot of shots. Like, yeah, because that's the nature of being the best player on a bad team, right? Like a very strong take there, I thought, from Ray in that regard. Thoughts from you, Doug, before we move on?
Well, sum up his take real quick, because I feel like there was 2 competing things here. Like what you're saying that like how can they?
I'll give you ready. Cam Thomas naysayers have to make up their mind and pick a side or position. Is this a tanking quote unquote with some of the worst collection of talent in the league, or is this somehow a team that we don't have enough talent to maximize what Cam Thomas is?
I don't think it's the second thing. I think that like Cam Thomas is like not the kind of guy. I don't think he's bad or anything, but he's just not the kind of guy that like you. How could they maximize talent? He's allowed to take every shot he wants. Like what else could they do to maximize his talent? Like what are they not doing to maximize his talent? It should be the other
I think
way.
he's really saying like you can't criticize Cam Thomas to a certain extent because of what the roster is. Like it is what it is to whatever degree. This is the roster around him, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think that they've. I agree with that. I agree with that. Like they don't have a great roster around him. I also don't think like it really would matter too much. I actually think what's going to happen is they're going to get to the free agency with him, and they're just going to be like, see if anyone else will give you the mid-level exception or something like that. No, okay, we'll just match it or something like that. Whatever the sort of minimum contract they can give him is or something, they're just going to match whatever the market says, and maybe no one even comes out in the market. Like with this new, like the new CBA and everything, and like these guys, just like these middle kind of guys, like not getting paid tons, and if you're not like. It's really hard to get paid now unless you are for sure can like start in the playoffs. Other than that, unless you can start in the like for sure. And sometimes like for sure starting the playoffs means you're like Cam Johnson or someone like that, right? For Cam Johnson can start for a team in the playoffs.
Cam Thomas and Cam Johnson are probably in much more of a similar pool than people would think, right, on paper, because of what it means when it comes to playoff basketball.
I think Cam Johnson has considerably more NBA value than Cam Thomas. Like, I don't think
it's actually okay. I mean, that's kind of what I'm saying. It's like, you're in this hat here, right? Whether it's age, injuries, or otherwise, but you'd be far more inclined to give Cam Johnson a contract.
He has way more value.
Yeah,
yes,
because
I don't think that's even a hot take. I think who's more valued league wide right now, contract independent. Definitely Cam Johnson. Definitely. Because you for sure can put him on a playoff team and he could start. For pretty much any playoff team, he would at least start. Maybe there's like two teams he wouldn't start. He wouldn't start for the Celtics. He would not start for the Thunder. Maybe he would start for the Thunder. In that like 3 spot possibly. I'm not sure about the Nuggets. Okay, so there's like a couple teams he wouldn't, if they were fully healthy. But the point is, do the same with Cam Thomas. Just do that. Just do that thing. Take all the playoff teams right now. Just do this. Take all the playoffs right now. Playoff teams right now. Who would he for sure start for? The list is considerably shorter than it is for Cam Johnson. So I think that's like the only really way to think about that. Like I think that's actually pretty easy. I know that wasn't like the original question, but I think you have to start there and go lower for sure. For sure.
We have, by the way, from Pimp named Slickback, love this guy, 7780. Not the original, but he is the 7,780th person that loves that name. We have 17 games to go. Why isn't Dariq Whitehead playing? I've tried not to complain as much this season, but it doesn't really make sense to not see what we have from a young player. Older vets shouldn't be blocking his minutes. Listen, he shoots 37% or 36% from the field in the G League. Like, and his 3-point numbers in 12 games in the isolated regular season, taking away the tip-off tournament, 38% from beyond the arc on, I think, 5 shots per game. That's great. But no one's blocking him from getting minutes. I think we'll probably see him down the stretch here for a handful of games because he was a first-round pick and they want to keep giving him that taste. But no one's blocking him. Like, no one's stopping him from taking minutes. He just needs to earn the minutes. Like, he needs to play better so that the team in Brooklyn says we should bring him up and give him run. Like, that's it. There's no one stopping him from getting on the court in Brooklyn as far as I'm concerned.
You guys have to dominate the G League to even think about stiffing the NBA. Like, that's not a difficult equation to figure out. If you cannot completely dominate the G League, you cannot get very far in the NBA because this isn't even like hard to figure out. Like, the guys in the NBA are 10 times better. It's not, and by the way, they're not 2 times better. They're not 2 times better. They're like 8 times better or something like that. Like that, there's a massive jump. There's a massive jump from the G League to the NBA in terms of talent. And again, it's not just like they're twice as good or they're a little bit better. They're so much better. These guys, you have to kill the G League. If you wanted to be able to sniff the NBA, you have to be so good at Long Island. It's just not. Like, it's 13 points a game on 30 minutes for 35% from the field, 30% from 3. It's like not even close to good enough. Like, it's, and I hate to just be the guy who just like looks at stats and just tells the story, but I'm telling you with the G League, it does tell the story, especially for a guy like an on-ball wing. Like, that's the whole story. There's nothing else.
One last quick one here before we get out the door, because I had asked about, we'll talk about it as the season winds down. How many picks will the Nets make in the draft? Dan Leahy, the BK Waylay, like, this is our way back. This is one of the OG fans. He said 3/5. Like, he didn't say 3 out of 5. He said 3/5. And I just want to know, what 60% of which player do you want? And are you taking the top half of the body or the bottom half?
I don't even understand what that means. So I don't even.
I don't know if he didn't get the question. We love him. He's very supportive of us, but I couldn't really figure out how much of what he wanted in that scenario. But I'm sure we'll hear back from him.
All I know is I was in a fantasy league with him. I won it the first year, then I didn't want to do it the second year. So but I didn't want to be the guy that wins and then never comes back. So then I just shipped it for the next 2 years and basically never paid attention to it. So I ended up losing $100 buy and I ended up breaking even. I think I won and I still might have lost. Like,
you're a gentleman. You're a gentleman.
What's that?
That's what's nice about
I'm totally a gentleman, because I was like, I don't want to be in this league, but I don't want to be the guy who wins.
And by the way, doesn't everyone in any
home.
fantasy league, don't you love and appreciate the guy that commits to being in it and then doesn't do anything for it the rest of the season? Everyone loves that.
That was me. That was me the second or third year. I think I like read the rules wrong or something too. I don't even know what was going on. Okay.
Read the rules
I definitely read the rules wrong for the second year.
That's what I say when I lose leagues.
I must have read the weird with the waiver wires, and I just never replaced any. I did something weird, and then I stopped paying attention. On that note, make sure you subscribe to the Locked On Nets podcast wherever you listen to podcasts: Spotify, iTunes. I don't even know if there's another one out there. Just those two. Make sure you subscribe to it. 5 stars, and then go to the other platform that you don't listen to, subscribe to that one, and also give it 5 stars, because it's just totally free for you and it really helps us.
By the way, I got to tell you, closing out Fan Take Friday, this comes from Doug will tell you. He's one of the all-timers. Rate on Spotify, 5 stars or bust. I come for the end of the episode quotes, and that is, of course, Edward Caffrey 22.
Was that actually on the rate that was a rating?
That's on our YouTube channel. This guy knows it. He gets it.
Say the name again. Say the name again. This is how you get on the show. What is it?
Say it loud. Say it proud. Edward Caffrey, 22. We call him the Deuce around the podcast.
One of the all-time great poets. One of the all-time great poets. We'll be back again tomorrow or next week talking more Brooklyn Nets basketball.
Basketball. Deuce. Basketball.